There are some pros and cons to owning the Jeep Wrangler Diesel. And after 6 months, over 18,000 miles, and a whole lot of off-road adventures, I'm going to share with you my thoughts on owning the Diesel and answer some of your most asked questions like, should I have just waited for the 392? Welcome to TrailRecon, I'm Brad, and today I want to share with you what my experience has been like owning the Diesel Wrangler over the last 6 months, because I have been getting a lot of questions from you all about it along the way, and so I want to try to address as many of those questions as I can. And I'll just say, when the Diesel was finally announced it was going to be in the Wrangler, I was super excited. And while I like the Diesel, there are definitely some pros and cons, and I don't think the Diesel is for everybody, but we'll talk about that as we go into this review. But I'm not going to review the entire Jeep today. That's not what this is about. We're going to focus specifically on the topic of the Diesel engine. If you'd like to see a full review of the Wrangler, I'll leave a link down below what I did when we first got it. Okay, I think the first thing we need to talk about are let's just recap the specs of the engine. Every time I pop the hood of the Jeep, I'm reminded I need to do a little housekeeping in here. It's getting pretty dirty and I don't like it looking like this, but enough about that. Let's talk about the engine specs. So this is the 3-liter Eco Diesel, and it is rated at 260 horsepower and 442 pound-feet of torque. And you definitely notice that torque when you're going uphill and it doesn't care. It doesn't even downshift. When you put bigger tires on, it doesn't care. When you're towing, it doesn't care. That 442 pound-feet of torque really makes a difference. Now, it's rated at 22 miles a gallon in city and 29 miles a gallon on the highway. And I can attest that when I had the Jeep bone stock and I drove from Las Vegas to San Diego, I got about 29.6 miles a gallon. If I would have taken my foot out of it just a little, I probably could have hit over 30. So those EPA numbers are really right on point. Now, the fuel tank size on this is 18.3 gallons, which is smaller than the standard 21 gallon that comes on the regular Jeeps. It's a little disappointing because I would have liked to have that little extra fuel, but that's because they add the DEF tank, the diesel exhaust fluid tank, which is 5.1 gallons. And I'll get into my thoughts about DEF here in a little bit. But this motor has held up great over this last 6 months. I have had no issues. But let's talk about how it's performing since I put these 37-inch tires on. How cool is it that in this day and age, we're excited about fuel economy on a Jeep? That's not something that we would do in the past. We'd usually be a little depressed about it, but it's pretty cool. Now, that is a $4,500 option for the Diesel. So if you're planning on buying the Diesel because you want to save a bunch of money, well, it's going to take you a long time to kind of recoup that $4,500. Something to think about. The reason you buy the Diesel is because of torque and range. And the great thing is that fuel tank at 18 gallons times 29 miles a gallon is going to give you 500 miles of range on a long road trip. And when you're doing overland adventures, it's awesome. It's perfect. I don't really carry a lot of extra fuel. I shouldn't need to. That's awesome. The other reason is the torque. To turn these 37-inch tires, on the old 3.6 liter, it's a lot of work. You got to re-gear it. This has 373 gears, and when I step on the gas with these 37s, it still just goes. And it rolls right into 8th gear on the freeway, no problems. People have asked, do I think I'm going to re-gear? I don't think so. It pushes these tires right along, and I'm still getting about 20 miles a gallon in the city, which is pretty respectable. And when I'm on a long trip, I'm well over 22, 23 if I keep my foot out of it, and that's with 37s and full gear on a trip. I'll take that all day long. Now, if you've never owned a Diesel, I think there's a couple things that I can provide a little bit of insight on that might be helpful for making your decision. And one is, not all gas stations have Diesel. In fact, where I live, just right next to each other, one gas station has Diesel and the other one does not. And the one that does have Diesel only has 2 out of like 8 pumps that have Diesel. And so if I pull up there and there's already a car there and they've gone inside to get a Slurpee, well, I'm just waiting where there might be a whole bunch of other gas pumps that I could just pull right up to. So sometimes it can be a little bit of an inconvenience. One other thing is, I don't know what the deal is, but gas attendants don't usually do a good job of cleaning the diesel pumps. And so usually after I get done filling up, my hands just smell like diesel and I feel like I need to wash them. It's not a bad smell, but if you're going to work or something, you don't want to walk into work smelling like diesel. The other thing is, you typically will save about 20 to 40 cents per gallon, but it really depends on where you are. When we did a trip to Missouri earlier this year, we were on a pretty well-trafficked trucking route, and along that route, diesel prices were much higher than gas, and that was very interesting. So it just depends, I think, on where you are in the country, whether or not you're going to save on the diesel. Now, one experience that I had, which was caused a little bit of an anxiety, is I was out in Death Valley and I was leading a group for charity out there. And the one station out there didn't have diesel, and the one that did, I pulled up and they were out of diesel. And I was like, oh, this isn't good, because I didn't bring any extra diesel with me. Thankfully, somebody out there had a truck and they filled up from their auxiliary tank, and that was super helpful. And if you're listening, brother, thank you so much for saving the day that day. That was amazing. But there can be some times where it's hard to find diesel. So just something to think about if you're going to buy one. Now, while finding a diesel pump might be a big challenge, it is not my biggest complaint about owning a diesel. It is this right here. This is a box of diesel exhaust fluid. This is 2.5 gallons. And if you see here, there's a little blue port, and you have to add this to there about every 2,500 miles has been my experience. And it's a 5.1 gallon tank, which means it takes 2 of these boxes. And so you've got to open up this box, and there's this little spout here like that. That was really obnoxious. And then you fill it up, and this weighs about 20 pounds. And so you've got to lift this and pour this in, and you've got to do that times 2. I can tell you my wife's not interested in messing with diesel exhaust fluid. The other thing is, when you are filling this up, you don't know when you are getting to be full. It may say that you are close to empty. You'll get a warning at about 500 miles saying that your engine is going to go into limp mode basically when it reaches zero def. And so you need to find a place that has this. And most gas stations, it's been about 50-50. Usually if you can go to like an auto parts store, they'll have them. But it's a good idea just to have a couple extra of these. But know that the shelf life on these isn't great. But anyway, once you get to about 500 miles, you're going to go like, oh, okay, I need to go pick up 2 boxes and fill it up. Well, when you fill it up and you start pouring this in there, it's not like a gas pump that just automatically stops when it's full. It may overflow and just start spilling all over the place and just make a mess. And it's like this crystallized stuff. And so diesel exhaust fluid is not my favorite thing to deal with. Now, there are, I think I've had it on like maybe 3 occasions where I've been lucky enough that there was actually a diesel exhaust fluid pump at the gas station. So you go fill up your diesel, and then you pull up to the next pump and you can fill up your def. And that one, thankfully, does stop when it's full, and so you don't overfill it. And those are pretty nice. I would love to see more of those out there, but I guess more of us need to buy diesels. 1 box of this is about $14. So you're looking at about 28 bucks every 2,500 miles has been my experience. I think when I got the warning, it said at like 3,400 miles is when I'll need to fill up again, but I haven't seen it go that far. So def isn't my favorite thing. I wish there was a better solution. Now, 2 other common questions that I get asked all the time are, am I having any problems with Regen notifications? And what Regen is when the engine heats up to burn off some of the particulates that are in there, some of the soot. And I have not had any Regen notifications come up on my dash, and I haven't had any issues with it. I think it's because most of the time I'm doing long trips, and I think it just burns it off as I go. I think if you're idling your vehicle often, or you're doing short trips, that the diesel is going to need to have to do this Regen cycle to burn off some of that particulate. I haven't had any experience with it. I know there's some people out on the forums that have had some, they've had some experiences. They're like, what is going on? Why is it doing this? For me, I think it's just because I'm doing long trips. The other question I keep getting asked is, how much does an oil change cost? And I'll tell you, the very first oil change that I did, I took it to the dealership. You ready for this? $249 for them to change the oil. Wow, that's a lot. You can do it yourself, but it's still not cheap because the diesel takes very specific oil, and it's about $14. I think it's about $14.80 per gallon, or I'm sorry, per quart. And it takes 9 quarts. So you do the math, $14.80 times 9 quarts plus the filter plus your time. I mean, you're gonna save some money. It's not gonna be $249, but it's still pretty expensive. So let's talk about this for a second. You paid $4,500 for the diesel option. You're paying $14 per box of DEFs. You need 2 boxes about every 2,500 miles, and every 10,000 miles, you're gonna spend $249 to change your oil. Cost of ownership, it's kind of starting to rise a little bit. All right, so that's a lot of information about the diesel, but how does it drive? That's the important piece, and I'll say I love driving the diesel. When I'm on the freeway and I need to pass somebody, it doesn't care. I could just step on the gas and it just goes. 37s or not, towing a trailer or not, it just pulls right through. That extra torque is really nice. And I'll mention towing the trailer has been a breeze. Now my trailer's not heavy, it's just a little over 2,000 pounds, but it doesn't care that it's back there when we're on long trips. And when I'm off-road, it's got plenty of torque to get me up and over obstacles. It works really well. This engine is 400 pounds heavier than the 3.6 liter, and I thought that was gonna be a noticeable factor off-road. I will tell you, I have not noticed it. I think it's an attribute to, you know, the little stiffer suspension up here to account for the weight and that extra torque. I don't notice it. I'm sure if we did some kind of scientific gyro study or something, you could probably tell a difference between the 3.6 and the 3-liter diesel, but I haven't noticed it seat of the pants. Another cool thing is manufacturers are starting to come out with some aftermarket modifications for the diesel to give you a little bit more power, like this one right here that I just got in the mail the other day. We'll be doing a full video and review and install of this, and we'll see just how much of a difference that makes. I'm looking forward to checking this out. That's going to be pretty cool. All right, you guys have a bunch of questions you've submitted. Let's sit down and answer these real quick. Okay, I think I've answered most of the questions I've been getting, but there's still a few more here that I just kind of want to run through real quick, and we're going to do this very fast, but come on, guys. Are you stoked about this? I'm excited to see how well this works. And just full disclosure, I have no affiliation with banks. I just wanted to check this out. If it doesn't work, I'm going to pull it off and throw it in the trash or send it back. But I'm optimistic. I think it's going to be kind of cool. It's supposed to add quite a bit of horsepower and torque. All right, let's go through these questions, and I'm just going to hammer through these. Do I regret buying a diesel? No. What was the noise like inside? Does it sound like a school bus? Inside, you do hear kind of that chatter of the diesel engine. I like the noise. It's not loud. When you roll the windows up and you're cruising down the freeway, you really don't notice it. It's more when you have the windows down, you're kind of slow rolling around town, you notice the chatter of the diesel, but it's a good sound. Will I regear? No, I'm not going to regear. I think 373s right now are the way to go. Now, if I was going to throw 40s on here, maybe I would regear. No plans to do that, by the way, but I don't think it needs to be regeared. Do you still prefer the diesel Wrangler over the Gladiator? Yes, I loved my Gladiator, but I've said this before that having a Wrangler and having a full-size truck, I didn't really need something that was in the middle. If you're somebody that wants a Jeep, but you want to do truck stuff with it, I think the Gladiator is a great option. For me, I like having both. Does the diesel give you more noticeable lower-end torque over rocks and steep inclines versus the 3.6? Yes, especially when I shift it down into low range. When I'm crawling over rocks, it is noticeable. All right, come on, Brad, spit it out. It's definitely more noticeable than the 3.6. Would you own this vehicle without an extended warranty? I don't know. I think it's a pretty good idea to get the extended warranty, but if you're going to be doing a bunch of mods and stuff like this, you might be breaking that warranty. So just keep an eye on that. I think on a new vehicle, first year model, extended warranty sometimes is a great option. If you had the choice, would you go for the diesel again or the 4XE? Now, I have not had the opportunity to drive the 4XE. I can't wait to drive it. I think it's a really good option. I don't know. Let me drive one first and then I'll answer that. How long would it take for the MPG to make up the cost difference between the diesel of the 3.6 liter or the 4 liter turbo? I think that really depends. Like I said, some places it's actually more expensive for diesel. Most places it's not. Most places it's cheaper, but it's not a lot cheaper. And then you throw on the cost of the DEF fluid and the oil change prices. it's going to take you a long time to recoup unless you're just putting in, 50 to 100,000 miles a year, then you'll get a little faster. But it's going to take you a while to recoup that extra $4,500 plus all those maintenance fees. Have you had any problems with the diesel engine or the emissions or check lights or any recalls? No, no, and no. I haven't had any issues, thankfully. I know that's not true with everybody. There's been a few folks out there that have had problems, but I know many people that have been just like me and not had any problems at all. The engine is running strong. Will you keep this for the long run? Okay, that's a fair question. Everybody knows that I go through vehicles pretty quick. It's been something that my wife has hassled me for 26 years of marriage. I, get bored of cars and I swap them out. Will this be long term? I don't know, probably not. I'll probably hang on to it for a few years and then swap it out with something else. I just like to keep vehicles going. The silver Jeep's not going anywhere, so that's good news for those people that love that one. Would I buy the EcoDiesel again? I don't know. Again, I would like to drive the 4xe, and I think the 392 is a really good option, and that leads me into the next question. Should I have waited and held out for a 392? Boy, oh boy. I got the opportunity to drive the 392 and I loved it. The only thing from keeping me wanting a 392 over the diesel is the price. It's a lot more than this, but man, Marco just got a 392 and he is loving it, and I'm a little bit jealous. I love the diesel. 392 is pretty rad. Would you trade it in for a diesel Gladiator? No, I won't trade it in, but I just explained why, but I think the diesel Gladiator is a great option. Any difference in the steering? Does it feel vague? No, that's a good question. You would think with the extra weight up front, there may be difference in steering. The steering is nice and tight. It feels just like it did when I drive my Gladiator, when I drive my wife's Jeep. It's solid, no complaints. And have you ever considered a Banks tuner? Well, yes. And we'll be talking about that soon. Okay, guys, there you go. Hopefully I've answered a lot of the questions that you've been having about the diesel. If you still have other questions, throw them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. I hope you've enjoyed hanging out with me in the garage today. Thanks for watching.